Hi, welcome to Far From Eden. Well, it was Pirate Racing NZ who tipped me off to the ridiculousness that's going on in Australia for men. It's insane what's happening there. Apparently, women are so victimized that they need a special minister to the government in Australia to basically tell them how to be. So we've got kind of the normie version of this is what we're doing. And we have the response from Spectator online. The normie version comes from CNN. So they never disappoint with being the ultimate of the propagandists. Propaganda, whatever. You guys know what I mean. Okay. All right. Let's see. Who is this written by? Antoinette Radford. What? I mean, why not? Okay. An Australian women, I'm reading it as it's written. An Australian women push for action on domestic violence, a problem described by the country's prime minister as a national crisis. One state has appointed a special official charged with improving men's behavior. Victoria Premier Jacinta Allen, not exactly sure how to say that name, but Jacinta Allen announced Wednesday that state MP Tim Richardson would serve as the inaugural parliamentary secretary for men's behavior change. The first position of its kind in the country. That's terrible. Can you imagine if they had a secretary for women's behavior change? Speechless. Okay. Richardson said he would focus on the influence the internet and social media have on male attitudes towards women and on building respectful relationships. It would not be easy work, but it is important, he added. He is the white knight. He's gonna save you from all those bad men. I'm skeptical because who they call the bad men, those are the good ones. So anyway, quote, "We must make Victoria a safer place for women and children and work to end the tragedy of deaths of Victorian women at the hands of men," Richardson wrote on X. Gender-based violence is plaguing Australia. 31 women have been killed across the country so far this year, according to the Counting Dead Women project. Last year, 64 women were murdered, the group said. Yeah, but here's the thing, you guys. Men are also murdered by men. Bad men do bad things. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are being targeted because you're a woman and because he's a man. It could be because that's a bad guy. And yeah, what do I know? Last weekend, a woman and her daughter were shot dead in Perth, Western Australia, by a man who was allegedly trying to find his ex-partner and daughter. In a statement, the man's daughter said that, quote, "When my father couldn't find us, he murdered her best friend and her best friend's daughter." I mean, that's a tragedy, and that should never happen. But that does not mean that there is a domestic violence, rampage and that men's behavior is bad. It means there are criminals. That's all that means. The country was rattled by multiple violent incidents in April, including when 5 women were killed by a man armed with a knife at a shopping center in the suburb of Bondi in Sydney. No comment. It was with a knife. I wonder if he was an Australian or not. Just curious. Police said CCTV footage showed it was obvious the man targeted women. In another violent incident, a 28-year-old mother was allegedly murdered by her partner, who was already facing charges of raping and stalking her, but had been released on bail. And we have to choose better. I'm not saying anybody deserves that. Nobody deserves, to be a victim of crime. But we're not good at discerning. Tarang Chawla, Chawla, who founded the nonprofit Not One More Nikki after his sister Nikita Chawla was murdered by her partner in 2015. Okay, just making sure I got this straight. Told CNN he hopes the new parliamentary position will make a tangible difference to addressing male violence in Australia. The role gives me some semblance of hope that the focus is shifting away from this being a woman's problem to solve, and instead is a man's issue that we can take leadership for, he said. But it also requires the parliamentary secretary to consult and collaborate on solutions with those working on the ground, with men to understand their attitudes, the drivers of their actions, and work to change their behaviors, he told CNN. Yes, but you're saying they're doing it because they're men. It's not because they're men. It's because they're criminals. And they happen to be men, because men have testosterone. So the most violent criminals will be men. It's not because they're men. I mean, I'm not good at math. My brain doesn't work real great spatially. We all know, if you've been here for 5 seconds on this channel, I am not good with technology. But I can understand this. I can understand that this is not because they're men. That is a false conclusion. Oh, I swear I've heard of this lady before, though. Okay, sorry. I lost my spot again because I get fired up and then I forget. Oh, yes, I'm reading something. Oh, it's a man's issue. But it also requires a parliamentary secretary to consult and collaborate on solutions with those working on the ground. Oh, yeah, with men to understand their attitudes, the drivers of their actions. Right. However, not all Australians had a positive reaction to the news. Jane Hume of the opposition Liberal Party, who represents Victoria in the National Senate, questioned the efficacy of the appointment. It does sound to me like a little bit of window dressing around a really important issue that involves genuine cultural change, she told Sky News. Oh, so what, did they not go far enough? Lola thinks it's time for her treat, and it's not. There's 15 minutes left until it's time. So don't you think about knocking the tripod over. She's very naughty. She's going to be 15 though next month, so it's like. Anyway, Lola's my little dog. If you're new here, yes, I'm a total stereotype. I have a little dog, and I always forget to ask you guys if you will please like the video. So I made this thing that when she distracts me, that's our cue to please like the video. And please don't knock over the tripod, little girl. Okay. So this lady's like, that's just window dressing. Okay. Within hours of announcing the position, Richardson took to X, writing, some pretty hectic reactions here to an important role in Australian first. It will, I think sometimes it's AI writing these things. Anyway, it will be about modeling positive role models for boys and men and ensuring we break away from gendered-based stereotypes and building respectful relationships. Well, what are you doing right here if that making a stereotype that all men are violent, men are this, we got to have a men's behavioral person? Building respectful relationships. What is respectful relationship? Is a respectful relationship where, oh, you just do whatever she says all the time? No. And never expect anything? We had respectful relationships in the past. We've had this. This was all figured out. But, colleges teach that those were horrible relationships and women were abused and were, basically prisoner, when that's not the case. And here's how I know, because the children of those relationships, and I'm going back, I'm not saying Gen X, and I'm not even saying boomers. Further back, when people had whole families, like they were whole, they weren't broken, and their lives didn't revolve around career, relationships were good, and they were good, and I know that because good, healthy children came out of them. It wasn't until we broke the family apart, things started really going awry. Okay. As boys and men, we need to lead this. How can you possibly lead it when you're just violent, horrible people? While the new parliamentary secretary for men's behavior change now exists at a state level, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese also announced in May a rapid review into the prevention of domestic violence after calling the problem a national crisis. We recognize that governments need to act, but we also recognize that this is an issue for the whole of society. Women should not be responsible for ending violence against women, he said at the time. I mean, even if, this is just for argument's sake, even if this were true, wouldn't you want women to choose better? Or were you just saying they're all the same? Because it seems to me that if this is a national crisis and if this is rampant and it's a huge problem, then why would you get into a relationship with those types? Anyway, I can argue till I'm blue in the face. So a little bit of cleansing. Spectator online. Victoria's absurd new minister for men's behavior. I was like, okay, we don't normally do it where we're going to have the both sides, but I found this and I was like, this is too good. This was published May 29th, 2024, and written by Terry Barnes, it appears. Okay. Australian states like to advertise themselves on car number plates with catchy slogans with a catchy slogan capturing what they see as their self-image. My home state of Victoria's slogan is the place to be. We have that with states here in the United States. I think, what is Connecticut? The Constitution state. California is the Golden State. Oh Lord, there's a bunch of them. And I think Indiana, is it the Hoosier state? Ohio's Buckeye. Anyway, they have them and it's on the license plates too. But Victoria's slogan is the place to be. When it comes to identity politics and the state's government's obsession with progressive causes to the point of being extremist, Victoria is very much Australia's place to be. I love this article. Cursed with a conservative opposition that can't organize a knees up in a brewery, Victoria is all but permanently governed by an Australian Labor Party, which to my understanding, that's like the leftists. That's like kind of like our Democrats, but it's definitely left. That's all I know. Sadly, that's about as much as I know. Anyway, Australian Labor Party that, even compared to its national and other state counterparts, is striving to remake Victoria as a socially progressive paradise. It is dominated by MPs from the party's hard left faction. Goodness gracious, my eyes. Which leads to social policies that even Corbynites in Britain would applaud. There are extremely permissive drug laws, the most radical policies on transgenderism, children's gender dysphoria, and euthanasia of any state in Australia. We're trying to have a competition with Canada or Portland. There is unquestioning acceptance and propagation of the left's standard narrative that Australia is a racist society and British colonialism an evil thing for which all Victorians must atone. Not to mention the fact that the state's capital, Melbourne, was the most locked down and curfewed city in the Western world in the dark COVID years. I didn't know that, but that does tell us a lot, doesn't it? Since late last year, the Victorian government has been headed by a hard left premier, Jacinta Allen. Lately, however, Labor been struggling in the opinion polls as voters are starting to tire of its big spending and heavy-handed politics. And Allen has struggled to get out of the long shadow of her long-serving predecessor, a political control freak named Daniel Andrews. But voila, this week, Allen has put Victoria on the international map with one of the most bizarre pieces of identity politics yet seen from a Western government, which is why one reason I'm covering it, because the rest of Western nations should, this is a beta test. It's a total beta test. Yes, I wear a permanent tinfoil hat. On her Twitter account, Allen announced that, quote, "We have appointed the first parliamentary secretary, equivalent to a junior minister, for men's behavior in Australia." She's actually wrong. It appears this is the first appointment of its kind anywhere. Yeah, shouldn't she be proud? They're such, charging ahead into this, dystopian future. On seeing Allen's tweet, you could be forgiven for doing a double take and thinking it was posted by a parody account, but it's absolutely true. The Premier's official statement confirming the appointment says, Tim Richardson will become Parliamentary Secretary for Men's Behaviour Change, continuing the Allen Labor government's priority to make Victoria a safer place for women and children and work to end the tragedy of deaths of Victorian women at the hands of men. This is the first position of its kind in Australia and will focus largely on the influence the internet and social media have on boys and men's attitudes towards women and building respectful relationships. Yeah. Richardson is a decent bloke, a plodding local MP and devoted family man. But apparently his appointment is going to solve all Victoria's problems caused by relationship and family violence. Yeah, exactly. Sure, why didn't we think of this sooner? There's no denying such violence is a significant problem in Australia. Up until the end of April 25 women, including 5 in Victoria, died from family or spousal violence this year, 11 more than for the same time in 2023. Individual stories that have emerged in recent months have been horrific. In one New South Wales case, a woman was murdered allegedly by her ex-partner, who was released on bail, having been charged with multiple counts of rape against her. I mean, that is awful. That should not happen. And I know that you guys agree. I understand. And I would imagine if she had a father in her life or brothers in her life, they would probably very much like to take care of that guy. They can't. You can't handle things on your own. That would be vigilantism. So the government's going to take over. And, it's always better when they do, isn't it? But to assume, as Allen has, that all men are toxic perpetrators in waiting is both lazy feminist and identity politics, and an insult to the overwhelming majority of men who deplore family violence of any sort as utterly repugnant and who strive to be kind and loving husbands, partners, and fathers. Exactly. Thank you. That Allen's sweeping generalization about men as perpetrators is so unfair and wrong is highlighted by another court case making news in Australia today. A former beauty queen in Tasmania who became an MP for the Labor Party, Catherine Hay, is facing charges in Tasmania alleging a decade of emotional abuse, including alleged related incidents of physical assault, which did great harm to her former male partner and the father of her child. Yet, like Queen Victoria's, oh boy, apocryphal denial that lesbianism exists, the all but unchallenged feminist narrative embraced by the likes of Allen in Britain as well as Australia is that men are only to blame for family and relationship violence and abuse, and therefore only women and children warrant protection from such violence. And that is, of course, not true. It's of course not true. Will Allen or her hard left political allies and social media fellow travelers say anything about cases like Hayes or otherwise acknowledge official statistics proving men are not solely to blame for such violence? Not on your Nelly. I'm not familiar with that phrase, but I rather enjoy it. It's clearly Australian or British, probably Australian. You guys will let me know. Instead of leading serious and respectful community conversations about relationship violence and how best to confront and combat it, Allen is instead playing gesture politics with an untrue and judgmental generalization about men in Australian society. This is an absurd clickbait gimmick that collectively has made her, her government, and the state of Victoria an international laughingstock. Given that Keir Starmer's party, goodness, I'm butchering these names, has been looking to Australia and Australian Labor for much of its policy inspiration as it eyes a stonking parliamentary majority, can Britain be assured that Jacinta Allen's absurdist piece of identity and victimhood politics is not something Labor will pursue should it be elected in 5 weeks' time? Watch this space. I think we should. Because like I said, I think it's a beta test. I think they're wanting to know if the people will, take it. And it's just propaganda. It's just a way for them to be like, look, men are the problem, but they're not looking at the whole picture. Just because the most violent people in a society, the most violent criminals in a society happen to be men, it does not mean that men are violent criminals. This is the stuff that probably makes Jordan Peterson's head want to explode. When people are messing with, statistics like this to make it look a certain way. And there's just too many people, there's just too many female people who are too ready to be in the victim group and not take any kind of responsibility for who did you choose? I want to know more. Do these men have fathers? Do the women who are choosing them have fathers? Are the women also violent? Because obviously, if you have a woman and you have a man and they're both violent towards each other, the man can do more damage because he's bigger and stronger. I mean, that's a big reason why men are usually like, it's a problem. Nobody should be beating anybody up. Nobody should be doing that at all. And we know that as a society. I love when they just seem to go, I'm going to fix this problem. And it's like, you know what, though? You kind of made the problem. How are you going to say in all of these Western societies where they're moving towards, communism and doing things that break up the family, that there aren't going to be, bad, maybe this is to cover up the fallout from breaking up the family. Let's just blame it on something else and let's look over there. Could be. Either way, this is something that we need to be looking for because they just kind of tell us, don't they, when there's a new bureaucracy, here's a new minister of such and such. So anyway, sorry to the men in Victoria. Maybe in Australia, they're moving to states in Australia that are a little friendlier to their political views or to their entire gender. I'm not sure. But what this does is it makes women want to, claim victimhood more. it plants an idea. And it's horrible. Imagine young guys, like a teenager, hearing about this and being told that you're toxic. And I know you guys have been through that already. You've already fought those. And then now it's another level of it, isn't it? It's awful. So that's what's going on down under for now, at least until, it spreads. I really wish the women would speak up, because we have fathers, we have brothers, we have sons, we have friends, and we need to speak up. So hopefully more will learn the truth and be open to a different perspective. I'm not holding my breath, but I'm also not giving up. So it's always on my mind of how to, make things better, even if it's for one person, even if it's one person's mind that's changed. Because I don't think this ship can be turned around. I think it's going to crumble and then be rebuilt. But I'm hoping for fewer men to be disenfranchised. I'm hoping for less pain for men. And I'm hoping for more women who see the light and speak up. Because you guys know they don't listen to you guys. But they do listen to some women. They don't want to listen to me either. But if I can, convince a woman here, a woman there, I'm painfully optimistic sometimes. So I hope you guys have found a way to feed your souls today. I hope that you have taken care of yourselves this week. And it doesn't have to be a huge thing. You don't have to, be like the king of working out. Just drink a little more water. Take a walk. Look at the flowers. Listen to the birds. It's amazing what it does. But I love you guys. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for letting me know that was going on down there. And please let me know if you have any other suggestions or any other news that comes in. I try to cover as much as I can. It's never enough, but I do my best. Anyways, I love you guys, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Okay?